let me explain your assignment to be a Stoic. Am I asking you to do this? Why am I asking you to practice some ancient Roman philosophy? Well, because reading about Stoicism, which you've already done, without practicing it is like reading a recipe but never getting to cook the meal. That's no fun. While it would be interesting and educational to read about Stoicism, you're going to understand it better if you experience it and actually practice it a little bit. So here's your task. In order to understand more completely the principles of Stoicism and to challenge your own cultural competence, I'm going to ask you to try to spend 24 hours as a Stoic. Okay, so 24 hours, a full day. Using what you know about Stoicism and your own experience, I'm going to ask you to complete some before and after writing assignments. I will show you those down below. This is also a showcase of your critical and creative thinking because you have to explain your answers. Hopefully your answers are going to be thoughtful, interesting, and make your thinking visible. Okay, you're going to need to elaborate. That's critical and creative thinking. But your communication skills should also come into play here as well through clear and expressive writing and careful proofreading of what you have written. There is a rubric for this. You can look here if you like. It's a single point rubric. So here's what you need to do to demonstrate proficiency in knowledge, right? Content knowledge. Do you show that you understand what Stoicism is by referencing the information that you read about? Critical and creative thinking. Do you elaborate to show rather than just tell about what happened and how you felt about it in the pre-flexion and reflection writings that you're going to do? And do you give specific examples from the experience to support the things that you say about your experience? Written communication, so pay attention to your word choices, your sentences, the mechanics of writing. Hopefully you will just show me that you have proofread. And then skills with student, can you follow these instructions and turn your work in on time? If you reach proficiency, I will mark it here. If you go beyond that, I will say something about that here, things that you can do to exceed the standards or things here where you don't quite measure up to what I've listed here as being proficient. Okay, so that's your rubric. Let's go back. So what are the pre-flexion writing assignments that you need to do? First, you need to tell me when you are planning to do this. So first of all, why do you plan to be a Stoic during those dates as well? So for example, from Saturday morning on October 28th until Sunday morning on October 29th, because I have a lot going on Saturday, so it will give me lots of Stoic chances and challenges. Okay, so that's what this person might write there, but you're going to write something similar. Okay, then you're going to choose and explain 2 things that you're going to do in order to attempt to be Stoic. I will give you some suggestions down below, but you're going to write a very brief paragraph here which tells why do Stoics do these things and why have you in particular chosen to do them. Then, this is kind of a Stoic exercise in itself, to anticipate the experience, right? What difficulties do you expect to encounter here? Stoics like to think about that in advance because then they're often pleasantly surprised, right? That things go better than they expected. Okay, and then I'll come back to this reflection opportunity here in a second, but let me go back to what are some suggestions you could do, like to be Stoic. You can probably think of some, but let me show you some classic Stoic exercises. You can just click that link. 1, you can practice something that's called negative visualization. It's not negative thinking. That's something different. It's negative visualization. Notice these are links. You can click here to this link, which takes you to a really great website, which explains different Stoic practices. And here it's talking about what you can do to do this, right? So it's, here it asks you to think about what if your possessions, your body, your family, your friends, everything could be taken away in a second. Right? Remind yourself that everything you think to possess is not really yours. Even if you paid for it, everything you have could be lost. So here are the kinds of things to make your mind focus on. Be aware that things that you hold dearly can be taken away. Things can be gone tomorrow. And that makes you really appreciate the things that you have right now. So that's kind of what negative visualization is about. There's also a brief little video clip here, just a few seconds that you could look at. But look, Stoics believe that this is how you deal with negative emotions. Sometimes if you stop and think about what is the worst thing that can happen, then it helps you stop taking the good things that you have in life for granted. kind of like a person who experiences a health scare comes to appreciate life much more afterwards. So to feel happier and truly appreciative in life, you should pause a few times each day and think about, well, what if I didn't have this? Or it could be a lot worse if I didn't, whatever. Like before your next meal, take a minute to think about, what if I didn't have this food? What if I had to grow it or make it myself? What if I couldn't eat because I was too sick? Stoics and, surprisingly, modern psychologists also think that this is a really great mental exercise that brings you more happiness by teaching you to appreciate and embrace what you already have. A second thing you can do, which is also explained on that same website, is to set internal rather than external goals. As they describe it here, the Latin word for it is amor fati, which is to love your fate, right? Just focus on what you can control. And your fate sometimes, often, is not one of them. Let me go back to my description here. Most people try to become happy by trying to change the world around them, but Stoics taught that everyone can be happy right now. You don't have to wait for some future date. Just avoid being frustrated by what you can't change. Just change yourself. That's the easiest thing that you can change. Change your own mind, your own goals and desires. For instance, maybe you really want to win your soccer game, but to be honest, the results of the game are not entirely up to you. You cannot totally control that. So there's no point in getting too attached to that. Plus, if you lose, you're going to suffer these negative emotions. And this is what Stoics really want to avoid, having negative emotions. What is in your control, however, is the effort that you make out there on the playing field, right? What do you do to support your team? What's your attitude? How do you approach things? What happens when things don't go well? All of that you can control. If you focus on doing the best you can, you're less likely to be upset and more likely to win as well. Okay, I think that's a really kind of powerful thing to remember, right? Really, if something is not in your control, let it go, but really focus on doing what you can with the things that are in your control. Okay, 3, don't worry, live in the present. Of course, this website has a little advice about that too. Stoics always want to stay calm, even in the face of challenges or adversity. That's the most important thing. They want to buy calmness and peace of mind. So, to that end, why worry, right? Worrying means that you are trying to control something about the past, right? Something happened in the past and your mind is just spinning about that, but you can't control the past. And you only have partial control of the future too. So why stress about things that are going to happen in the future? They're going to happen if they're going to happen. So there's no need to stress yourself now and later, right? You're just kind of putting yourself in double harm. Don't waste a lot of energy worrying about these things. Stoics think that you can control your present right now. Just stay present. You can choose to spend this moment wishing it were different, or you can embrace this moment. And by doing that, you will make the most of your experiences and find great enjoyment in life, right? I love this. Peace must be found in the present, even though it's imperfect. 4, Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor, right? Someone who was very powerful and wealthy and could have anything he wanted, really said the way to be happy is to live simply, right? Here's a great a piece of advice at the same website on the same idea, right? Stoics were what we call minimalists. They valued what they had instead of longing for what they don't have, right? That's so important, right? We spend so much time thinking about things we wish we had that we don't even think about how great it is the things that we do already have, right? So Marcus Aurelius said, receive without pride and let go without attachment. Don't get attached to things that you have difficulties to, go ahead and accept change even when you don't want to, right? You become slaves to your possessions. And we often feel that if we lose these things, we're going to be so unhappy or unfree or unworthy. But remember, there's no prize at the end of your life for having more things, right? At the end of the race here, none of us are going to have anything. So I love this very Stoic expression here. Very little is actually needed to make someone happy. This has actually been proven by modern psychology as well. Number 5, spend time and attention on what really matters. Marcus Aurelius said, it's essential for you to remember that the attention you give to any action should be in due proportion to its worth. In other words, how much of your brain power and your life's precious time should you give to things? Well, however much they are worth. We are all guilty of wasting a massive part of our lives on things that do not matter, right? Like, you know, I can't tell you how many times I get caught up going down internet rabbit holes, and then an hour later I look up and that hour is gone, right? Where Seneca, one of the great Roman philosophers, said, we're all so tight-fisted with property and money. We hold on to these. If someone takes your property or your money, you're like, you're just so angry, right? And yet we think too little of wasting time. We just give our time away freely to all kinds of ridiculous things. But Seneca said that's the one thing about which you should really be the toughest miser. You should really save your time. It's the one thing you can never get back. Once it's gone, it's gone. Property, money, all that stuff you can regain, but never time. Therefore, the Stoic focuses on things that truly matter and avoids wasting time on things that don't. So here's how you could do this. Eliminate any distractions, things that you should not be spending time on, and be very intentional about how you spend your time for 24 hours. Here's one I hope a lot of people will choose, which is to listen actively. Zeno, who was the original Stoic philosopher, taught us that humans have 2 ears and only 1 mouth, and there's a reason for that. We should always be listening twice as much as we are talking. Epictetus, the other famous Stoic who was born, actually he was born a slave, but he gained his freedom, and then he went on to write, let silence be your goal for the most part. Say only what is necessary and be brief about it. On those rare occasions when you're called to speak, then speak, but never about banalities or, unimportant things like gladiators or horses or sports and food and drink, like commonplace stuff, like gossip, basically. Don't gossip, don't praise, don't compare, right? Like really just listen, find someone out there who's important or who's worth listening to, and really listen to something that matters that person has to say. And then you can reflect on what is that experience like to listen with your whole self. That's how psychologists talk about it. What is it like to listen with your whole body without distraction? And what techniques do you use? I put a link here to some really powerful active listening techniques that you could employ, and it would be interesting for you to reflect on that. Okay, here's one you might not like, but it's to try voluntary discomfort. I would encourage you to click this link. Stoics consider it worthwhile to practice doing away with some daily comforts, and they're not doing that to punish themselves. Instead, they think that it prepares you to face hardships that are inevitably going to come, right? Hardships will face us all. How are we going to deal with them? Well, Stoics rehearse. They think that self-denial also helps us determine what's really necessary versus what we can live without. Like maybe you think, oh my gosh, I need this $400 pillow or I cannot sleep. Well, really? Try going without it and see how dependent really are you. They think that knowing that you can withstand a little bit of pain builds your confidence and courage, and it lessens your anxiety about the future. Again, I want to emphasize that this is also a message that is delivered by modern psychologists today. They talk about exposure therapy, right? Like it's good for you to be exposed to things that challenge you a little bit, or make you a little bit uncomfortable, because that's how you grow and you overcome anxiety. Periodically going without also, here's another benefit, it helps you appreciate what you already have. On the flip side, Stoics believe that being, totally addicted to pleasures can enslave you, right? These things that you really love and that are really pleasurable, you can become servants to those things. Those things can become your masters. So it's not good to be totally dependent on these things for your own happiness. So as a result of going without, Stoics became famous for their courage and their self-control, and they were able to withstand and resist more than others. They were just tougher. So it's interesting to think, what could you give up, right? I'm not talking about like food, right? Like there are basic necessities of life, but what are some comforts that maybe that you could try going without and see what would the effect of that be on you? Okay, you're not going to like this one either, but being unfashionable, right? Stoics think that your freedom and independence are really important. So they advise you not to value too highly this idea of social status, because if you do, then your whole goal becomes to please others. I mean, I know we know what that's like, and it can be a very unhappy life if your whole goal is to please others, because you will no longer be free to please yourselves. You enslave yourself when you seek fame, status, popularity in the eyes of others. It's something you can't control. One way to overcome the urge to win the admiration of other people is to go out of your way to do things to trigger mockery, right? So go out of your way to do embarrassing things so that you overcome that terrible feeling of embarrassment. The famous Roman senator Cato, for example, who was a famous Stoic, practiced this by being laughably unfashionable. When everyone else wore light purple, he wore dark. And although Romans normally went out in public wearing shoes and a tunic, he wore neither. So he bucked the trends. He went against the trends and dressed differently in order to get himself used to this feeling and to know that being ashamed only of what was really shameful, right? Your clothes are not something you should be ashamed of, but maybe it's your character, right? Like he was really forcing himself to really focus on what's important and to ignore men's low opinions of other things. So what could you wear that would just be the worst, right? To sort of train yourself not to worry about that kind of thing. Another great Stoic practice is to write a journal every night. The famous Roman Stoic named Seneca practiced self-reflection, meditation every night before bed. That's a common Stoic practice, and you can find the link here to journal prompts that the Stoic website is asking you to ask yourself, right? What good did I do today? What could I do better? What do I need to do to be the best I can be, right? They noticed they're encouraging that you do it for 5 days, but you know what? I'll be happy with one night, right? So find a quiet place where you can reflect and recall in detail what happened that day and write down the most important things that you can remember and what was your reaction, right? Remember, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control the reaction that you have, and then evaluate that, okay? That would be an interesting practice. Okay, and then last but not least, this is one of my favorite ones. It's like shifting your mindset subtly and taking something that you have to do, right, that seems overwhelming, like this to-do list, which can be intimidating and stressful, and turn it around so that it's not a have to do, it's a get to do. And it's like a privilege that you get to do this. So Stoics just do this subtle mind shift exercise to help themselves see themselves as fortunate and to receive and respond what the world offers to them. So instead of thinking how awful it is to be stuck in traffic, try to be grateful, right? Take that as a chance to take a deep breath and relax for a few minutes when you don't have anything else to do and you can't do anything else. It makes a big difference. I guarantee you, it makes a huge difference in how you see life. If you can take your to-do list and then reframe it, rewrite it as a get to do. What's so great about these things that you are doing this week? Let me just show you a couple examples so you can see what it means to choose a Stoic exercise. First, let me explain the reflection after. So there are 3 parts to the reflection. After you've spent your 24 hours, do not do it before, right? I will be watching to see if you do this before, because then it's fake, right? You want to make sure that you really do have your experience, maybe take notes on it as you're experiencing it, and then write this afterwards. So in a descriptive paragraph, describe how it went. Be specific. Show, don't just tell. What steps did you take to make it an authentic experience? And what obstacles did you encounter? I mean, you predicted you were going to encounter some difficulties up here. So I wonder, did you actually experience those difficulties? The second part is to write a thoughtful, honest paragraph about something that you learned. And that could be about yourself. It could be about Stoicism. It could be about the world around you, but be specific. Doesn't matter. Reflection 3 is to explain how does practicing Stoicism lead to a good life. Here, I'm expecting you to elaborate to show what you know about Stoicism. Let me show you just a couple examples of student work here so that you get some sense. So here's someone who is planning what to do for their Stoic experience. Notice that they answered part of the question. They told me when they were going to do it, but they didn't tell me why, right? So over here, I'm saying this is incomplete. Be sure to address all parts of the prompt. Here, what are 2 things that you're going to do? And this person said voluntary discomfort and turn have to into get to. And here they explain why the Stoics choose to do these things. They sort of explain why they're choosing to do it, but they could elaborate a little bit further. And I'm saying, they need to proofread a little bit more there. And then they're anticipating the experience. Okay. And then they reflect, right? So afterwards, be specific in describing what happened. Well, they said, I made my to-do list into a get-to-do list. It was hard because it's chores I didn't like doing, like taking out the trash or picking up dog poop. But changing that into a get to take out the trash or I get to pick up dog poop was very weird. And I'm just asking that person to like think a little bit more about that. Like, why? Well, what's a get to do about taking out the trash? You know, like I might think, well, you get to clean your environment, right? Which is really nice. Or you get to have a home where you don't live in piles of trash because you take out the trash and someone comes and picks up that trash. That's a kind of amazing thing. Or I get to pick up dog poop. That's easy, right? I get to pick up dog poop. I get to have a dog, right? Like, that's awesome. I get to live with this wonderful animal who provides such comfort. You know, in exchange for that, I'm happy to pick up this dog poop, right? And the second step is voluntary discomfort. They slept with no covers and took a cold shower. And they say, this was not hard for me, but I'm just looking for them to describe more like, well, why? What was not hard about it? Because you would expect it to be hard. So how did you feel about it? I'm just looking for them to push a little further there. Okay, and then they explain a little bit more. I think there's room for further elaboration here. Okay, here's another person who, okay, they're choosing this time and it'll give me more time to be a Stoic. Well, okay, but can you say more about that? They're choosing to do voluntary discomfort and reflect daily. Okay, but they could add a little more, like, well, what do you mean by voluntary? What are you going to do? I think Stoics did this to prepare them for hardship. Yeah, okay, true. So what are they going to do? They're anticipating that it's going to be hard. Okay, yeah, I get it. They're saying maybe I could draw pictures as part of the reflection. I was like, good idea. Here they're reflecting and they're saying, you know, it was actually pretty fun to reflect every night. I spent so much time doing it. I think I might like to do it more. Making negative thoughts. Okay, well, this is not it. Stoics want to avoid negative thoughts. I think they mean negative visualization. Turning them into positive thoughts was pretty hard because I couldn't see why having a fire was good, but I was able to see how it was raining and it would be watering the plants and maybe I don't really know what they're saying here, so that's why what happened? What, was there a fire? I don't know. So make sure that you're really clear, and then they explain some things down here. Okay, so that's your assignment. I hope you get it. Feel free to reach out with me with any questions you might have. I hope you enjoy your 24 hours as a Stoic and you learn something valuable about something.